So, I was wondering if my ghosted ex-wife might be tracking me down. I headed to the hills after finding out about my wife's affair. To be honest, I'm not really sure why I'm writing this, but now that the dust has settled and I've moved on, maybe it'll help someone. Back in February 2018, I found out about my wife's affair after we'd been married for 3.5 years. I had a contract job that involved a lot of travel, but it also allowed me to work from home when I was back. My wife had I was a director of a technical sales firm, and I'd say we had a pretty good marriage, even though things got a bit strained because of my work trips and the fact that I was working longer and longer hours. 5 years ago, I met my wife at a barbecue with a mutual friend. We got talking and, honestly, I thought I was lucky to be with such a beautiful I was working as a director of a technical sales firm at the time. I would describe our marriage as good, although things had got a bit strained because of my work trips and the fact that I was working longer and longer hours. 5 years ago, I met my wife at a barbecue that a mutual friend was holding. We got talking and hit it off straight away. To be honest, I thought I was lucky to be with such a beautiful, intelligent woman. Somehow, she really liked me for my rough-around-the-edges persona. Once we started dating, after a few weeks, we couldn't get enough of each other, and the clothes just flew off when we met at each other's apartments. We finally tied the knot after dating for 18 months and moved into a big apartment while saving for a house. After the first 3 years of marriage, things started changing. I still was crazy about her, but I noticed she would start arguments about little things and she would get angry when she'd always bring up the late nights and the work nights out, which had been getting more and more regular. She'd say it was just part of the job, that she was climbing the corporate ladder. Or at least that was her excuse. She told me I didn't have the right to question her, since I was away for weeks at a time too. I told her I could definitely manage reducing my travel hours, and that I was only going on trips maybe 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks or so. These arguments were very circular and never had a resolution. I look back and I had no idea my wife was having an affair. I would never have suspected a thing except for her late work hours and our dwindling sex life. I just thought it was because she was tired from work. But my ego was hurt from being turned down when I tried to have sex with her. I didn't see the point of texting that I read about, but then again, she had a company cell phone and she could have been using it, since she spent a lot of time in our spare bedroom. We used it as a home office. It was around September 2017 when Kathy started coming home after work and then heading off to a work event in the evening. This went from 1 evening a week to more than 3 evenings a week. I'm not usually jealous, but there's no way she would go unnoticed, and I know she would have to fend off some of the men at her office. She only seemed interested in work, but she was working with more male executives than female. My first suspicion of her cheating occurred a month before D-Day. On the way home from the store, she asked me to help with the shopping while she got a couple of bags from the back seat of her car. I saw something pink glinting from just under the front passenger seat. It was one of my wife's bras. I recognized it as hers, since she liked the ones from a particular apparel store. Now, I realize why she gets a red flag when she gets in. On the way home, she asked me to help with the shopping while she got a couple of bags from the back seat of her car. I saw something pink glinting from just under the front passenger seat. It was one of my wife's bras. I recognized it as hers because she liked the ones from a particular apparel store. Now, I realize why she always takes off her bra first from underneath her clothes. I don't know exactly why, but I had a bad feeling in my gut when I saw it. I couldn't work out why her bra was under the seat. I just left it there. It almost made me sick, and my heart was beating really fast. When I got back to the kitchen with the bags, Kathy asked if I was okay and said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I just brushed her comment off. I tried my best not to look angry or betrayed, but it took all I had to hide my feelings that evening and the next. I decided to see if I could find out if she was involved with someone or not. I started thinking about all the clues I was missing. I had no proof except for the bra. Instead, we live in a fairly large city and her work is in a downtown office building. I kind of took my focus away from it. I decided to stop thinking about the affair for a bit and give her more attention. One Friday after work, I made a nice dinner, set the dining table with nice plates, silverware and candles, and bought a nice bottle of wine and a bouquet of roses. She came in after work as usual. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had prepared. She gave me a sad smile and told me she was sorry, but she had plans to meet up with her co. I decided to stop thinking about the affair for a bit and give her more attention. One Friday after work, I made a nice dinner, set the dining table with nice plates, silverware and candles, and bought a nice bottle of wine and a bouquet of roses. She came in after work as usual. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had prepared. She gave me a sad smile and told me she was sorry, but she had plans to meet up with her coworkers tonight at a local hangout. She said she could grab a quick bite with me before she left, but had to jump in the shower first. I think my insides flipped and I became completely speechless. I won't tell you what kind of rage I was feeling at that point, but I was pretty annoyed by the time she was done with the shower. I grabbed my company phone and stuck it in her back seat. I'd been thinking about tracking her location with my personal phone, so I went in and threw away the meal and the flowers. She came back after her shower. She was all dressed up and looking great, as per usual, and said, "Okay, let's eat." I told her, "Never mind, go out with your friends." She looked at me strangely and asked if I was mad. I said, "Disappointed by you never wanting to do anything together?" She got angry and told me to quit acting like a child. She was all dressed up and looking great, as per usual. She said, "Okay, let's eat." I told her, "Never mind, go out with your friends." She looked at me strangely and asked if I was mad. I said, "Disappointed by you never wanting to do anything together?" She got angry and told me to quit acting like a child. She also said something snarky about having a short fuse. I stood there, letting all this sink in, and said, "Foolish me. I thought you'd like to spend the evening together for once." She just smirked at me and left in a huff. I took out my other phone and started tracking my work phone. I saw her stop. She was about 20 minutes away, at the bar she goes to with her workmates. I decided to go and find her car, and sure enough, there it was in the bar's car park. I sat in my car across the street, waiting to see if I could spot her. I felt so out of character, like a stalker, but I thought I needed to at least find out where she was. About an hour after I got there, I saw her coming out of the bar with a guy. He looked like one of the execs I've seen from her work. He grabbed her, pulled her clothes, and kissed her. My stomach went into knots, my body went. I tried to keep it together, but I was a mess. I followed them as they got out of the car and went into a hotel about 10 minutes away. I pulled over on the street next to the hotel and watched as they got out and went into the hotel together. I'm completely numb. They head over to another car and get in together. I do my best to follow them as the car pulls out. They travel about 10 minutes away to a hotel, as you might have guessed. I pull over on the street next to the hotel. I watch as they get out and head hand in hand into the hotel. I've seen enough. I'm an idiot. I start banging my fist on the steering wheel. That's it. Some part of me went completely blank, and I'm not sure if I blacked out or had an out-of-body experience. When I recovered myself, I decided I needed a drink. This is when my life took a new direction. I would never have predicted that I just started driving out of town, reliving everything I had just witnessed, and I hate to say it, crying with rage. I headed towards the outskirts of town, about 30 miles, and found a nice little bar where I pulled in, sat down at the bar, and ordered a drink. I must have looked like death warmed over, because the woman behind the bar said that I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails. I smiled and said, "You could say that." A guy took a stool next to me and started a conversation. I wasn't in much of a mood to talk, but something about this guy just made me feel comfortable. We started talking, and after a while the subject of my wife cheating just tumbles out of my mind. How I just want to leave her and forget her. He looks at me and slaps me on the back. He says, "Buddy, you are not alone. A few years ago, something similar happened to me. I believe that sometimes these things happen for a reason, and let me tell you, your life can now change either for the better or the worse. It's entirely up to you at this point." Something about him saying this really shook me out of my glum mood. I mean, I know I'm hurting, but I'm starting to think that sometimes these things happen for a reason. I'm sure your life can change for the better or the worse, but it's up to you. When he said this, it really shook me out of my mood. I know I'm hurting, but I've always been able to see things logically. He's so right. Now we've met, his name's Ray. He's a country guy, but he's the sort of salt of the earth type that I really respect. He asks me when I'm going to move out. I guess it never occurred to me to even think that far. I know I don't want to be around this woman anymore, and I've got this fight or flight feeling. Ray says he feels very sympathetic to my situation and has an idea. If it comes to it and you feel like you need to leave at some point, he's got a travel trailer sitting. It's not in great condition and it could do with a bit of fixing up, so why don't you come and take a look? I'd be happy to give you a great deal on it. I've even got a nice spot for you to park it. It would be great if you could keep an eye on it for me while I'm away. It might do you good to get away from your situation. I took a minute to register his idea. The bartender had been overhearing the conversation and said, "Honey, she says if I could have escaped my crazy ex, you'd be doing me a solid if you could keep an eye on things for me. It might do me good to get away from my situation for a bit." I was just thinking about it, actually. The bartender had been overhearing the conversation and said, "Hey, honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in his trailer or anything to just get my head on straight. I feel like I've stumbled into the twilight zone, but maybe this is exactly what I need." I told Ray, "Yes, I'll think about it and maybe check it out." We parted ways after a bit and made plans to meet at his place in a few days later. I started to feel like I had a bit of perspective and a chance to get out of what I thought was a nightmare mixed with a heavy heartache. One thing was for certain. There was no way I'd ever want to be with my wife again. Cheating was always the one thing I'd never tolerate. I got home after Kathy that night and sat on the couch. Kathy came out and asked me where I'd been. I turned to her and asked her where she'd been. She said, "You know, I went." I asked her straight up if she was having an affair. She looked a bit shocked, but got herself together and said no. "Why would you ask me that?" I told her I heard she might be seeing someone from work. She asked who told you that. I told her someone that I know, but I wouldn't say who. She just told me I was being ridiculous and that I was drunk and out of it, and asked me where I'd been. I told her I'd been to a bar to have a few drinks with friends. She just stared at me, wanting to ask me more, but I went back to bed and decided to sleep on the couch, since I now had proof that she had been lying to me for months. I couldn't sleep at all and started picturing her with this guy in bed, and I felt disgusted, hurt, and like I deserved it. However, I started thinking about race and it was almost a revelation. The idea of it just made me feel better. I must have something wrong with me, but with the pain I was in, fight or flight mode kicked in, and the flight part we got on really well the next morning. We don't speak much and just go about the weekend as if nothing had happened. A few days later, I made plans to meet up with Ray. I met up with him at Ray's place, which is a nice ranch. The trailer is actually really nice, about 26, and has everything you need to live in it. I had traveled with some friends and one back in college during a spring break and really enjoyed it. I make Ray an offer on it and he agrees to the price. I practically steal it from him. He gives me directions to his ranch property. I drove over to check it out, and it's really beautiful with loads of trees and scrub. There look like there are some hiking and biking trails nearby, too. It's near the foothills of some mountains, and Ray's got a little shack on a hill with a view of the property, and there's water and electricity for the trailer. Ray's going to pull the travel trailer to the side and set it up for me. I tried to get Kathy to come clean during the next few weeks, but all I got was gaslighting. I even told her straight up that if I found out she was cheating, there's no going back now. This has the opposite effect of making her even more involved in her affair and making me deny it even more. The denial is so bad it almost made me laugh. I have no physical proof of her cheating and I kick myself for not at least taking some photos of the two of them as I go through this awful period. I realize that I left this marriage rather than tell Kathy how I feel about things. Now I just start making plans. I start taking my belongings out of the apartment while I was at work and moving them over to the trailer, which made me feel like I was getting on with things. I did notice a change in Kathy during this time. She's been acting nicely around me, but to me it's too little too late. She carried on going out with her friends after work, so I decided I needed a break too. In fact, as she was heading out for the evening, I got dressed. She looked at me and asked where I was going, so I just said I was meeting up with some friends. She started to ask, so I just told her. She didn't know them and she wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk. This is exactly what she'd tell me when I asked if I could join her at one of her office outings. She looked a bit hurt and said, "Okay, have a nice time." I said I definitely would, between working on the trailer and meeting up with Ray at the bar. I've started to make more friends. In fact, it's led to some fun times with a great group of Ray's friends and family. And in case anyone asks, I decided to moderate my drinking so I'm sure I've picked up a few bad habits recently. Kathy told me she's got to go on a work trip the following week, and I asked who was going with her. She told me it was the executive team and some department heads, and I looked at her and said, "I hope you have a really great time with your boyfriend." I kind of wish I hadn't said that. It got us arguing, and I wish I knew more about her AP. Ray told me, "In the long run, it doesn't matter who the hey, so about that other guy, it's kind of irrelevant that she decided to leave you, right? She burned down the marriage and she can own it or deny it, but the facts are facts, man. Ray should totally write this stuff down and publish it." For the betrayed, her work trip gave me the chance to move the rest of my stuff out completely. So after Kathy left for her trip, I gathered everything I had left that was worth anything and put it in my car. I'm not taking any furniture or the so it's just close and we're computers and equipment. Before I left, I'd written a note to leave for her, but then I decided to keep it simple. I grabbed a piece of paper and wrote, "I hope it was worth it." I put my wedding ring on top of the note and left it on the kitchen table. I felt so much better. I felt free, no more hiding the truth. I know I'll have some baggage to deal with and some hurt to get over, but I have time to heal now. I just need some space. I need to get her out of my life as quietly and quickly as possible. I'm not proud that I never confronted her again, but I did get a confession out of her. I never got to yell and scream and curse her. After I confessed, I thought that she didn't deserve me. She disrespected everything we had. Our future plans are history. We were saving for a house and a family, but all of that is gone now. We can't go back. I don't owe her anything. She can deal with the aftermath of the fallout. I didn't have an agenda. I didn't contact a lawyer or anything. I just wanted to get some clarity. I really enjoyed the trailer and the mountainous air were just what I needed. The following week, I took up running again and it felt great to be alive. I didn't reply to any of Kathy's texts while she was away. There wasn't much to say. They were just highlights like, "We just landed," "We are having a team dinner," etc. She did send a few where or use messages and let me know how things were going. On the day she returned home, my phone went crazy. She texted me nonstop and tried calling me all the time. After the first day, her mother tried calling me, too. My dad left on my family side, and we aren't close, so she didn't try to get him involved. After the first few crying messages, I never bothered to listen to the rest of her voicemails. Her texts consisted of things like, "What is this? We need to talk. I don't know what you think you know, but there is nothing going on. I'm not involved with anyone. I'm not having an affair." After a week of not responding, she finally left me a text saying, "I'm sorry things got out of hand. I was involved with someone at work, but it meant nothing. I got caught up in it. I made a mistake because I was going through a rough patch with my work and you. I was going to end it, but I just made a mistake." This was the confession I had been looking for all along. For some reason, it just made me dislike her even more. Why couldn't she be honest? This wasn't the woman I had dreamed of building a future with. Mistakes don't last forever. And at one point, she was begging me to come back and work on our marriage. That was pathetic. She quit bothering me for a couple of weeks, but I still refused to answer her. I didn't want to. I didn't want this woman ruining my sanctuary, so I tried to keep her out of my life. But then she started sending me angry texts, like, You're a coward. You won't talk to me. You don't care about us. Please come home so we can talk. Where are you? I can come to you. Damn it, Paul. Please let's talk and fix things. I don't remember all the messages, but they all seem to be excuses and very little in the way of apologies. I let it all go in one ear and out the other. I finally changed my cell phone number. Update: June 2018. Kathy emailed me to say she'd got a lawyer and was filing for divorce. I replied saying okay, sounds good. This led to a bunch of emails demanding that I come and see her and so on. She realized this wouldn't get her anywhere, so after a while she just wrote that if I agreed to an uncontested divorce, she wouldn't bother me anymore. I agreed, and several months later I was finally a free man. I never had to see her again after I left our apartment, and it felt like that was more important to her than to me. For a few months I did think of her sometimes, and yes, the pain would appear out of nowhere, like if I heard a song come on. I agreed, and a few months later I was finally free. I never had to see her again after we left our apartment, and it didn't really bother either of us. But it seemed like that was more important to her than to me. For a few months I did think of her sometimes, and yes, the pain would appear out of nowhere, like if I heard a song come on, the radio that we used to listen to, etc. But eventually, I just stopped thinking about her. I updated her too well. I am officially divorced. Things are really good now. As a matter of fact, I met a great girl. I was out running on the trail just down the hill from where I live. I helped her change a flat tire, and we really hit it off. She is amazing. She's a few years younger than me, but she loves my lifestyle and calls me her mountain man. I'm in no hurry to get serious, but I'm not about to give up on women completely. I'm still here in the trailer. I have no plans to change anytime soon, and I've simplified my life quite a bit. I love the outdoors. It helped me get over my ex-wife, the heartache, everything I know. Everyone deals with these things differently. I was lucky to not have kids yet and was only into my 3rd year of marriage, so I think I did what was right for me. You don't have to live your life with an Akieter. If something like this happens to you, please just don't dwell on it. Just move on with your life. It gets better after you work on yourself. I wish everyone the best life they can have. I just wanted to update on the situation I found myself in with my ex. I've rewritten this about 5 times to make it easier to read. As I said in my last post, I was worried that my ex was trying to track me down to reconcile. I'd moved about 2 hours from where we used to live. I saw her last weekend in a coffee shop I go to often in the town near where I live. I thought it was weird that she was there. Luckily, I was able to leave before she saw me. I came back into town this past weekend to get some groceries and went to get a coffee in the place I usually go to. 2. I was working on some documents I needed to fill out for work using their free internet. After I'd finished, I left the coffee shop and was walking towards my truck when I heard someone yell, "Paul!" I looked across the street and there was Kathy, my ex, waving at me. I was in shock. She ran across the street and approached me, expecting a hug, and I instinctively held my arms out with my palms out. She stopped and looked at me, really hurt. Then Paul says, "I've been looking for you. I heard you moved out here and wanted to see you. Can we talk?" I feel like a trapped animal, guys. I really did. So I relented and said, "Okay, let's find a table or something and we can talk for a minute." She asked if we could go to my place, but I said no. She followed me down to a bench outside a little shop at the end of the block. She started by saying how much I'd changed and how she loved my new look, my beard, and so on. She was impressed by how I changed, how I looked so fit. She put on a good act and I thought she looked hot. She was wearing little white shorts and a tank top, and her hair was tied back like I used to like. I was really paying attention, and I could tell she was really turning on the sex appeal. I had to really calm myself down and see where this was going. She starts out by apologizing about the whole affair thing. She says karma really hit her hard after I left her company and she learned of me. She had an affair and basically made things so unpleasant that she quit her AP. His fiancé got a telling off and was moved to another position in the company. He blamed her for us having to move, and she told his fiancé everything, which resulted in them breaking up. She lowered her head a little and started crying. I just sat there looking around, not having anything to say. She straightened up and stared at me for a bit. I asked her what she wanted from me. She wanted to tell me that she never intended to start an affair. She said she felt drawn in by all the politics and positioning in the company and thought the AP had manipulated her with his charisma and power. She said she stupidly thought she was using him as much as he was using her. She was going to come clean with me, especially after I accused her of having an affair. She hated herself during that time, and the after-work drinking was her way of dealing with it. She wanted to tell me that she never planned to have an affair. She felt like she was drawn in by all the politics and positioning in the company, and thought the AP had manipulated her with his charisma and power. She thought she was using him as much as he was using her, but she was going to come clean with me, especially after I accused her of having an affair. She hated herself during that time, and the after-work drinking was her way of medicating from the guilt. Right after I left her, she felt so foolish and alone, like her heart just imploded with loss. She immediately broke things off with her AP because she felt that, since I wouldn't contact her or talk to her, she had to find me and see if she could make things right for us and if we could start over again. She knows we are divorced, but maybe we could have a clean slate. I just stared at her and let her have it. I'm paraphrasing the conversation, but here it is. I really don't appreciate how you think you can just come back here and wipe away all the damage you caused. I'm not prepared to forgive everything you did to ruin our marriage. I told you before that if you cheated on me, we were through. There's no forgiveness, and there's no way to reboot this relationship. You killed it. You destroyed what we had the minute you stepped out on me. How stupid do you think I am? I followed you one night and saw you go into a hotel together. Do you know that I then realized that I've been raising my voice, and people were starting to notice. She started to sob, grabbed my arm, and I let her cry on my shoulder for a bit before nudging her away. She looked up at me and said, "I deserve all this. I know I do. Can you at least let me take you to dinner or something? I don't want to leave. I want to talk more. I want to make sure we have everything out in the open. I need time with you that you didn't give me before. Please, Paul. I know you may not want to hear this, but I love you. I didn't realize how much I loved you until you left and broke us both. I can't forgive myself for that. I don't think I ever will." As she started hyperventilating and sobbing, I pulled her up and hugged her. I know. I felt like that was the only thing I could do to calm her down. At that moment, I realized I had broken her heart, just as she had broken mine. I started walking with her and found a nice, quiet path. I asked her how she found me and whether she'd hired a PI, and she laughed and said no. She'd thought about it, though. She'd run into Stacy a couple of weeks ago and asked how things were going. Stacy let slip that she'd seen me, and Kathy made her spill the details. Stacy hadn't wanted to tell her because I told her not to, but she wouldn't let her go until she did. All she really knew was that she'd seen me here in town. I lived nearby, so she started coming here on her days off to see if she could find me. She really blushed when she said that, and I kinda chuckled. That damn Stacy can't keep her trap shut, so we did go to dinner. We found a nice little place with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything, as I didn't want any excuse for her to soften me up. She claimed she was too drunk to drive back. We actually had a good talk afterwards. I walked her to her car, which she wanted. She really wanted to stay and keep talking about it, and she wouldn't stop. She said she hadn't been with anyone else since I left and that I was the only one she wanted. I told her no, it's still too soon for me to go down that road. She begged to see me again, but I wasn't ready to commit. I gave her my new email address, but that was it. She wanted my phone number, but I said no, because I thought she'd just send me too many texts and calls. She cried about that. She said she'd be back in town next week. I didn't say anything to her about being interested in the weekend, but she said she'd email me with all the details of when and where we'd meet. Before she left, I asked her point blank if she'd forgive me if I cheated. She sat there thinking for a minute and said she would in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor or worked through the healing process with lots of talking and maybe even a binding agreement. I said, "Okay, Maybe I could do that in 5 or 10 years. She said that if that's what it would take, she'd wait. She then took my hands in hers, looked me in the eye and said something that really surprised me. She said, "God damn it, Paul. I'll always love you and will do anything to prove it." I bet she left. I'm still so shocked by what she said. She said it with such conviction. I still can't see myself back with her. I feel better, though. Right now, I can't even see her as I'm just friends with benefits. Maybe as a friend, but I don't know if we could be more. I'm not gonna work out again. Don't call me a chump, because second chances are rare for me. I went home and had a nice long run and a few beers, and felt I was in a good place. Can someone guarantee me that she wouldn't ruin that? I don't know. I just don't know. It's too fresh on my mind, but I have the luxury of time to sort all this out and get some perspective. Okay, so this will probably be my last update. I posted my story on Reddit, but the mod kept removing it to recap my ex. After over a year of me ghosting her, my wife finally got in touch to talk. She said she wanted to reconcile and start our life together again. To those who wrote to me and said I'd be some beta male who'd forgive her and get back with her, you'll be disappointed. She wrote to me this week, saying she loves me and regrets what happened. After over a year of her not answering my calls or texts, my wife got in touch to say she wanted to reconcile and start our life together again. Those who wrote to me said I'd be the typical fool and forgive her and get back with her, but you'll be disappointed if you think that's what's going to happen. She wrote to me again this week, saying she loves me and regrets the affair. She wants to come back and spend the weekend with me. I told her no. I'm happy living alone in my remote location and I don't want anything complicated. I've had the company of several women and friends, and at 32 I don't feel I need to change things. I've got my own life. I've decided to keep things as they are for now. I've had the company of a few women and friends, and at 32 I don't feel the need to change things. I've got my own plan and I'm going to stick to it. When she emailed me, I told her I wasn't giving her my new phone number. I told her straight, I don't want to get back together with her. I made my bed and now I don't trust her or know her anymore. I wish her well and I might be her friend one day, who knows. She was really frustrated with how vague I was, and she replied with something that made it clear where she stood. I told her I wasn't giving her my new phone number. I told her straight, I'm not going to reconcile with her. I made my bed and now I don't trust her or know her. I wish her well and I'll consider her a friend in the future. She was really frustrated with me, so she replied with something very telling. She was disappointed with my response, but she also told me she'd accepted a job offer in another state. She said she'd always wanted me to come with her. She knows my job is remote and I can live anywhere I choose, and she thought I'd consider coming with her. We could have a brand new start in a brand new location. She had little time left before she was leaving and wanted to see me in person and talk things through. I was disappointed with my response, but she said she'd already accepted a job offer in another state. She said she wanted me to come with her, but I knew my job is remote and I can live anywhere. She thought I'd be up for coming with her, so we could have a fresh start somewhere new. She was leaving soon and wanted to see me in person and make a deal. Luckily for me, I have to leave for business for a week, so she'll be gone for good. I'll get a few more emails for a bit, but I think she'll realize her time with me is up and she'll have to find someone else. She might cheat on them. I just wanted to share the update. Guys, live your best life, get rid of that old baggage and empower yourself to move forward. Good luck to you all.